Thought I would put together a little video. Hopefully, this is the start of many, but this is just going to be a really quick overview and general history and just a little bit of firing of a pistol I've had a lot of interest in for a long time, but really haven't been able to actually properly show off and fire until very recently. So this in particular is a Star Model 1920. Now, I'll get into it, but that's kind of a retroactive designation. The real official name that this pistol was called through Spanish military trials was simply the Star automatic pistol. But have given them a lot of these retroactive names just to be able to differentiate them from each other. As I'll get into, there were a lot of differences across multiple different patterns of pistol, all labeled under just the Star automatic pistol brand. But super quick overview, Star in particular is actually just the trademark name of the company Bonifacio Echeverria, which in itself actually went through a couple of variations. But it started as the brainchild of two brothers, Julian and Bonifacio Echeverria, both sons of a very prominent gunmaker in the Eibar region of Spain. This has been a metalworking region of Spain for hundreds and hundreds of years, down to the Middle Ages, doing blacksmithing work for knights in armor. Well, at the turn of the 20th century, they actually started getting into not just crude firearms development, but actually modern firearms development, things like automatics and machine guns and the like. So a bunch of different shops in Eibar were all doing their own thing, and a quirk with Spanish patent law basically allowed them to copy ostensibly whatever they wanted. The deal is that if a company, an external to Spain, company design wasn't being produced domestically in Spain, then you could just file your own patent for something that already existed. Um, that is how this was able to get away with being, I mean, pretty obviously a knockoff of the Colt 1911, but it didn't just start there. So important to this whole lineage before we get to the 1920 itself is what they were copying. So this is a Mannlicher 1905. Now, this is not exactly what they were copying. What they were copying was the pattern 1901 pistol, which is literally this exact same pistol, other than the fact that the rear sight was actually in front of this stripper clip guide. So this was a very early automatic pistol of the time. It was realistically a simple blowback pistol. It technically had a lever delay system in it that frankly just acts more like a slide stop than it actually does a delay mechanism. I mean, you can overpower it with just your hand. It's not a very it's not even close to a lock breach. I would dare not even call it a delaying system. But regardless, this was an early automatic pistol design to base your stuff off of, and Bonifacio's brother Julian actually developed a magazine-fed 32 ACP clone of this. It was under two names. Internally in Spain, it was called La Lira, and for export sales, it was called the Frontier. He built it with, I want to say it was Guardia Anitua y Compañía, which was another firm. It was not uncommon for burgeoning gunsmiths to even go work outside their family with a completely different family shop for a time. And Julian did that. Bonifacio did that. They both got their experience in companies, and then right around, it looks like 1905, 1906, somewhere in that ballpark, the brother joined back up and started on development of what would become the first Star automatic pistol. Now, the very, very, very first Star ever was basically just the Lira, so yet again another magazine-fed Mannlicher like this, but downscaled to 25 ACP with a little bit more influence of later automatic pistols in the frame. So the frame isn't exactly Mannlicher looking anymore. It's kind of starting to look closer to the Colt 1903 pocket hammer and similar design. So kind of getting that ruby aesthetic if you know anything about the A-bar produced Colt 1903 clones that were very common. Star also made one called the Astra, but it doesn't have any connection to the rest of the lineage of the Star automatic pistols. They just made a one-off Ruby for World War One. So they had their Mannlicher clones, right? Well, as they progressed through, in 1908, they came out with the more, like I said, Ruby pattern 25. And then they kept progressing. 1910, they upped that to 32 ACP, gave it even more proper, like modern aesthetics. And then in World War One, they came out with their very famous pattern called the 1914 retroactively. So yet again, this would have just been the Star automatic pistol, but this was specifically adopted by the French and used during World War One. I don't have one of those, but I do have the post-war commercial. It's ostensibly just a 1914. It's just got these also came like the 1914s with different size frames for different capacities. This one's a 8, but I believe there were 1914s with 7-round capacities, 8-round capacities, 9, 10. I've seen all sorts of crazy one-off capacity differences. I think I even saw someone sell a while ago an extended, almost like a Royale Ruby style, where the frame actually was like a 9-shot French pattern, but the grips were elongated so that it would hold a longer magazine. So apparently it's for like a specific police contract. So SAR did a lot of customization for these orders, right? But this was ostensibly, the pattern that they would go with. The only real difference with the 1919 from the 1914 is obviously this has very Eaton bone grips. The 1914 had wood grips, and the hammer pattern. So this is more like a traditional spur. It does, funny enough, have a hole in it, like a little ring hole in there. That's very clearly a leftover from that Mannlicher aesthetic, and the slide-mounted safety is very Mannlicher, along with the extractor doubling as a tension spring for the safety. Really neat how they did that. Seems like a very obvious, terrible wear part, but it is cool. So, they had these popular, successful. They had these in pocket pistol size, service pistol size, different sizes, different caliber, 25, 32, 380 even towards the end. And but none of these were lock breech. They were all straight blowback Mannlicher based pistols. Well, the Army was looking for a new standard service pistol to replace the frankly pretty terrible Campo Giro design, which was a domestic design that was ostensibly just a giant straight blowback tube in 9mm Bergmann Baird. They were using 9mm Bergmann Baird at the time because in 1903, the very first semi-automatic pistol that Spain ever adopted was the Bergmann Mars, which was explicitly developed in the 9x23 Bergmann Baird cartridge. This would end up being known as 9 Largo in Spain to differentiate it from 380, which was known as 9mm Corto at the time. So there's their 9 short and their 9 long. Largo is long, not large. But anyway, they wanted to replace the Campo Giro. It was a pretty awful, not very ergonomic. It's funky. I would love to have one, but they weren't exactly known for being incredibly robust or pleasant to shoot. So there were 2 main competitors in the competition. Star's offering, which would be the 1920, and the now formerly called Unceta e Compagnia, now known as Astra, were developing this, which is the Astra model 1921. It's been known in commercial sales as the Astra model 400. But the 1921 and the 400 is the same. This one has some just reproduction grips and some grip screws that do not match, but it is a perfectly shootable working example of the pistol. And I can tell you very confidently, they did fix a lot of issues from the Campo Giro, because this is Campo Giro derived. They did not make it very pleasant to shoot still. Straight blowback and 9 Largo with this thing is, it's not great. Also, in order to accommodate that, they gave it just an absolutely stiff as hell recoil spring. It functions, it's reliable, and the takedown is substantially improved over the Campo Giro. Also, I do actually really enjoy that it does have a hammer. It's just in the frame. It's like a Colt hammerless. But one thing I do like is that when you have the safety on, it flips up like that, lock the trigger. It also has a magazine disconnect. When you cock the gun, it actually folds the trigger, or sorry, it folds the safety down so that you're actually on fire. I do think it's a really neat thing. Supposedly, apparently, officers were told to carry with the safety on and the chamber empty, which would absolutely explain why they did that, so that at the very least they don't have to both cock the pistol and worry about twiddling with a manual safety. So at least they thought about that. There's a lot of other things they should have thought about with this design, but somehow this went up against the Model 1920, which, mind you, this is a straight blowback with a very stiff recoil spring and considerably heavier overall. This is lock breech. It's substantially lighter, and it shoots way, way, way nicer. The only thing I can think of, and this is a legitimate knock on the Star, is that the parts that, and I'll get into it, that make up the safety mechanism are very, very dainty, which would come to a head with their next buyer. But even with that, the just overall handling, ergonomics, and frankly accuracy, even though this is a straight blowback and you'd think it would have substantially higher accuracy with a basically fixed barrel, it has some lockets that it recesses in with the barrel. This shoots better too, just flat out. It's frankly kind of baffling to me how this ever lost to the Astra, but maybe it was a nepotism thing, since this was still a entirely domestic design, and this was very clearly a Colt 1911 inspired design. But who knows? But I know which one I would rather take into combat, for sure. So, yeah, the Astra 400 would then, proceed to be the standard pistol of the Spanish Army all the way through the Civil War, even through the bombing of Guernica, Spain, where these were being produced. It is very funny. A lot of these ended up getting copied by both Republicans after the bombing and routing of Guernica, and also the anarchists. Copies of this and design plans just got around. Some copies had the horrible, terrible grip safety. Some of them didn't, thank God. But yeah, the Astra 400 is certainly a pistol of all time. But back to the finally the king of the hour, the Star Model 1920. My favorite of the early Stars, simply because this is that dying gasp of the Mannlicher influence, but meets 1911, more modern, for early 20th century, more modern aesthetics. So let's get into the pistol. So, like I said, it is 1911 derived. Duh. It has a lock breech, cam link, or not cam link. I guess cam link. Swinging link. God, I could not think of it. Swinging link pattern, right? With locking recesses in the slide, just like your 1911. This is in 9x23 Largo or Bergman Baird, so it is not compatible with 9 Luger. Frankly, this is the second pistol I've had. I've had to find an actual working model of this, and it's kind of difficult to do because you'll notice on the side here it says Cal 9mm, and then underneath it there's a little 38. Kind of hard to get the camera to actually focus, but That is not 38 Super. For whatever reason, Garcia Imports, the company that back in the day imported the pistols into the United States, marketed them as being able to shoot 38 Super. 38 Super is demonstrably stronger than 9mm Largo by a decent margin. It is overstated how much hotter it is, but I will say that modern 38 Super loads are actually at least like your standard, not plus P rounds. Your standard 38 Super loads are a little bit lighter than they were back in the day. In the 1930s, when the 38 Super really came to prominence, it was substantially hotter than 9 Luger and 9 Largo by extension. And yeah, it clearly led to a lot of these being damaged. The previous 1920 that I had before this one had a completely destroyed extractor and a breech face that was actually a little concave. It was pretty sketch. It would fire. It couldn't cycle worth a damn because, combination of that slightly concave breech face causing the primer to start going back out a little bit. It also just could not extract worth a damn because of the damaged extractor. So this one clearly has a newly made extractor. This is not an original extractor. Someone very lovingly crafted this, and I thank them for it because it does work. And the safety, thankfully, is together. This safety mechanism that I'll get into was very, very commonly damaged by using 38 Super rounds, and I will get into why. So, this pistol, I've gushed about it long enough. Let's actually take it apart. So, just like your 1911, you got your plunger here that holds your recoil spring that you push down. You rotate your, I always forget the name of this, your barrel bushing to the one side, get the recoil spring out, and then rotate to the other side. It is a little bit of a tight fit, but it does come out eventually. Maybe. There we go. Okay, your recoil spring, your barrel bushing, substantially lighter recoil spring than the Astra. And then with that recoil spring out, we can, I cock back the hammer just to make the slide go back a little bit easier. Is a little funny because you got the little recoil spring guide in there that like to stick around. But then you you push back your slide so that the slide stop lines up with this little hole behind the notch cut for the slide release. So then you pull it out, and now the whole slide will go forward. There is your recoil spring guide, and then we can take out our barrel. Pretty standard looking 1911, not interchangeable with 1911s. This is not 1911 sized. Common misconception about these Star like models A and B and the A and B Super are that they are just like 1911 clones where like none of their parts are interchangeable. Not only because there are slight differences in things like especially the trigger mechanism, but also just they're scaled down. There were Stars that were what they called full frame, like the models M and P, but those were definitely the exception, not the norm. Most Stars were substantially scaled down from a typical 1911, this being no exception. So we'll get to the slide. Because I was saying the trigger linkage, it uses a crescent trigger, but it's I believe it's a double bar, isn't it? Nope, just a single bar. So maybe a little bit more 1911 close, but the whole system of the out of battery safety slash disconnect being this bar that the trigger bar pushes down into until it hits the slide recess. It feels very Ruby, so makes sense. They were building both Rubies and their 1914 pistol series. Got nice checkering on the mag release. I've noticed that wasn't a consistent feature across a lot of these pistols. I've seen a lot of older Stars that do and don't have the checkering on the button. I'm not really sure why that wasn't a consistent feature, but hey, whatever. It does have a made in Spain import mark because this was a Garcia import back in the day. This has reproduction grips clearly. They're very, very lovingly crafted. Very, very beautiful. I have never seen anyone offer reproduction star 1920 grips for sale. They're very funny looking because you're used to cutouts for the 1911 South Thumb safety and the plunger and everything, but it's not there because they built the plunger into the slide release. So pretty funny. They're just kind of very large and very plain looking, but I find them very endearing. And then you got your nice little lanyard loop like they had on their earlier pistol models. That hammer still has the hole in it, just very Mannlicher inspired. And that's pretty much it for the frame. I will get a magazine here in a minute. But here's the slide. This is very special. So the 1920 and then the 1921 pattern, which I'll show off here in a minute, has this T-shaped extractor. Now, the one I had previously wasn't damaged clearly from using 38 Super, but this was a known issue of an extractor design because in 1922, with that pattern of pistol, they did streamline this extractor design. Instead of a T, it's just like a straight bar that's just rounded at the front. A little bit simpler geometry. So clearly, this wasn't the most optimal. But weirdly enough, even after the introduction of the 1922 pistol, supposedly the first Model Bs, so the very first Star pistols and 9 Luger, actually weirdly kept this T-shaped extractor. I honestly have no idea why, especially if they had already moved on in their 9 Largo pistols to the just a straight design of the extractor. No idea why. But they did eventually converge and start making the Model Bs in the second pattern with the 1922 style extractor. Weird that they flip-flopped on that, but like I said, they were doing a lot of stuff, basically custom order for people until they came up with consistent patterns of anything. But besides that, you have the very bizarre safety mechanism. So if you look back here, you'll notice there's a whole lot of nothing. That is because the firing pin for this is actually 2-piece, and this little doohickey lever here rotates it. So you have a spring-loaded firing pin that's directly underneath this. Like it was on the 1914, it was both the extractor and the tension spring for the safety. On this, it is just the tension spring for the safety, which I don't even know why they went with this bar design, to be honest with you at all, because there's a coil spring underneath this that does it, where on the 1919, underneath this, there is no coil spring. This is ostensibly acting as the spring. So very bizarre that they chose to go with this weird tension lever design with a coil spring underneath it to power it. I really have no idea why they did it like that, but it does give it a very unique look. It still has that scalloped look of the Mannlicher pistol, which I really, really dig. Doesn't really need slide serrations because you got these big old hunkin' chunks cut out of the slide for you to grip your thumb and your index finger, or what have you, into. I've never had trouble racking the slide in this, which is pretty funny, considering it has no slide serrations. Pretty cool. I would imagine that also was a decent weight savings. Kind of surprised that they honestly couldn't just cut more material out from here and kind of keep that look going. Obviously here they got to widen it for the breech face. They could have ribbed it a little more down here. I think that would have been pretty cool. But neat things going on with this pistol. The rear portion, the rear firing pin, is on this obviously rotating block here. And it actually is not spring-loaded. It's the back of the actual spring-loaded firing pin section pushing on this that keeps it out. So, pretty neat. So, it's just a pin in this rotating block that that is a little bigger on the inside than it is on the out, so it can't fall out because it's wider on the inside where it's actually interacting with the spring-loaded, essentially first stage firing pin. Pretty cool. And then this lever that rotates it, it's got a little track in here, and this has a little groove that locks it in place so it doesn't fall out. The last one I had was pretty loosey-goosey where you could actually force it to come out. And it's got a little retaining spring-loaded just like not bar, or like rod here that actually keeps it tension so that it doesn't wiggle around. So pretty darn cool. Really like it. It is funny that when you have it on fire, the little spring-loaded lever sticks out like that. It's kind of funny. And then obviously it's hilarious to me that the safety, it's just like can't hit what ain't there. Very reminiscent of the Mac 50, if you've ever shot one of those, or I guess any of the French, like the 1935S and the weird SIG, the prototype to the P210 that were essentially just a 9mm 1935S. I do like that in is safe and out is fire, but I guess it could be a little annoying for a soldier to have to worry about rotating it out to actually shoot the thing. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those shooter preference sort of deal. But yeah, that's really the fact that this is got the slide firing pin safety and no frame safeties is really what makes this pattern unique. So they made approximately 3,800 of these in this first pattern, but not for the Army, obviously, for the Guardia Civil. So despite the Army's dedication to the Astra 400, the Guardia Civil had no love for that pistol. They were willing to foot a larger bill in order to basically entirely rely on their own logistics to be able to supply themselves with the Star series of handguns, finding them substantially nicer to shoot than the Astras, which I cannot blame them. So let me go and grab a magazine real quick. I have lots of Star magazines, and a lot of them look kind of similar. All right. So here we go. And this one actually matches the pistol. Neat. So this is the pattern of magazine that was used on these early Star pistols. Notice they have the circle cut. They would end up slightly changing the magazine catch geometry as they progress. This one, they call it the dog bone style. Pretty obvious why. And these circle cuts. Now on this, it seems very obvious that it's a bigger hole than the witness hole cuts. But on the 32 pistols, I swear it's just the witness hole cut that they just did again. It's like the exact same size. It's really funny. But they got the Guardia Civil stamp on the bottom. I'd be very curious to find a early like Trials era magazine that doesn't have the Guardia Civil stamp on it. That'd be really neat. But this is the 9mm Largo. It's 9x23, Bergman Bayard, whatever. The original loads were 128 grain 9mm projectiles. I reload with 124 grain because it's the common, slightly heavier, modern 9mm bullet that's readily available. I've been able to consistently get all my 9 Largos to cycle with 4.7 grains of Winchester 231 powder. And these are made off of some Starline brass. I don't think that's overkill. I did get into this big old tangent about how 38 is super dangerous for the kinds of old Spanish handguns, but I will say people have been babying 9 Largo a lot, basically treating it like it's somehow weaker than even some modern loads of 9 Luger. Contemporarily, it was stronger than 9 Luger. It was seen as a hotter load than 9 Luger. Obviously, 9 Luger over the years has gotten hotter in its commercial loadings, but not to the point of it being dangerous to use in these. You can basically take any one of these pistols, give them a 9 Luger barrel, and shoot them just fine as long as you're not shooting like plus P loads or something, right? Or plus P plus or whatever. 38 Super is a considerable jump up. So I'm using 4.7 grains. Most of the starting load data I'm seeing for 38 Super loads are in the 5+ grains. So there is a considerable difference still, even if you need to get them a little bit hotter than maybe some people are comfortable with to actually consistently cycle. Just something to know if you're trying to, get into the kinds of, exotic or antiquated handgun loadings. You got to know that you're going to have to eventually start reloading yourself, especially because most of the 9 Largo surplus that you're going to find from the Toledo, Santa Barbara, or whatever factories, most of them, not all, but the vast majority are going to be corrosive. So really, really nice to load your own. It's not very expensive. You can use regular. I use Lee 9 Luger dies to load this. You just back it off and size it accordingly. Your standard primers. The Starline brass is a little hard to come by, but you can use 38 Super Comp. That also runs reliably as a cartridge for this. I suppose 9x23 Winchester brass would be fine too. Be careful though, because whereas 38 Super is, not recommended and overall will eventually damage your gun, shooting 9x23 Winchester, which will absolutely fit in the chambers, will probably be dangerous to the point of maybe making the slide go airborne, sort of dangerous. You're talking a difference of, 9 Largo in the 37,000 PSI range, 38 Super in like the 39,000 PSI range, and then like 9x23 Winchester being in like the 45 to 50,000 PSI range. Very, very dangerous to shoot in these handguns. Do not fall for the 9x23 trick. It doesn't go in this gun just because it's 9x23. There's lots of 9x23 loadings. But anyway, this is the 1920. We'll reassemble it. You reassemble it just like you would a 1911. So put in your barrel first. It gets in the locking recesses. You put in your recoil spring guide, right? I put in the recoil spring and the plunger. I tend to just take the barrel bushing and just kind of put it in, slightly compress the spring so I can rotate it into the proper position, and then get it all as one contained unit first before I stick it back on. And then get it in there. Now you push it enough that you can line up the hole of the swing link with the slide stop, and then you just, you see it just fell in there. Lined up the holes correctly, fell in. You're ready to go. No plunger business, because like I said, it's built into the slide stop on these stars, which is really, really neat. Really the most obvious way to tell a star apart from any other 1911 variant is that slide stop with the plunger built into it. I'm sure there were other designs of pistols that did it, but star was the most prevalent. So yeah, you have the 1920. Now, it is funny because you can just rotate this and have that completely blank, slab of steel. So I suppose, other than like overall probably just very slightly denting your hammer over time, you could really just kind of dry fire this on that blank surface without the same kind of fear that you do with a lot of these older handguns and dry firing. Pretty funny, but yeah, it's my Star Model 1920. I did tell you I would show off the 1921, so this is the pattern that would immediately follow. I've shot this plenty. I just recently, got this up and cycling and running, but I have been using this 1921 for, oh man, I've been shooting this guy for, I want to say almost 2 years now, and I really, really like the way this handles. This is a, other than one annoying feature, this is a definitive upgrade they did keep that T-shaped extractor design. They also moved the the serial up here, which is really funny because Star almost always had the same pattern of marking all their guns. Obviously, like I said, retroactively it's called 1920s. They didn't have like a model designation. That didn't start until the model 1922, where when they started exporting it outside of Spain, they call it the Model A, and they would mark it on the heel of the pistol right next to the serial number, where that one's serial number is. Weirdly, because I guess because of the fact that you have this annoying grip safety that goes down in here, I guess they decided, you know, we're not going to put the serial number on the grip safety. We'll stick it on the frame, but kind of funny. And you can see by serial that they made substantially more of these pattern. These were clearly more well received than the previous model 1920. They liked having your traditional 1911 style, and this is really the closest that Star would ever get to a direct 1911 clone. Obviously, it's got an external extractor, and obviously it doesn't have a plunger, but it's got, you know, your thumb safety design, which mine's a little finicky on this one. It does work. I know it does. I think sometimes, yeah, for whatever reason, I gotta actually slightly cock back the hammer to be able to use the hammer safety. I've seen people's not require that, so it's not like a quirk of the series. It's just a quirk of this specific pistol. It has this weird internal track that it rides on because the plunger is just like the slide safety. It's in the thumb safety. It's like retained in here with a pin. They would eventually, where this hammer pin is, they would eventually put a spring-loaded plunger in the frame so that they didn't need the track. That wouldn't happen until, oh god, I think the third gen of the Model A, called the 1931. But for a while they had this, yeah, this like rail that goes underneath the grip panel and on the frame that kind of like keeps this the spring-loaded plunger tensioned and from just like flying out, which is a little interesting, a little jank. But otherwise, you know, it's got the thumb safety and it has the grip safety. I really, really, really hate grip safeties. I guess it has its fans out there. I find it a completely silly, doofus, goofy, stupid, added complexity thing that can just fail and makes the shooting experience just ever so slightly worse. Does it ruin the pistol? No. And I actually really enjoy shooting this pistol, but clearly, the Guardia Civil agreed with me because after this pistol in the 1922, they basically did this exact pistol, other than, like I said, they improved the extractor design and they ditched the grip safety. And that's really all they did. The original 1922s, I believe, had wood grips, and then they moved on to the bone style, like they did with the previous ones. And then eventually, they would move on from the stag bone grips to plastic over time, and then flip flop sometimes back to wood, like with the Air Force Model A's. But yeah, very slight changes from here on forward. But this was the clear, you know, big jump from the, you know, still a little bit Mannlicher inspired and quite a bit different first whack at a 1911 to a more traditional. Especially because, you know, this is based off the 1911 pre-A1, whereas the later generations of this pistol, like the Model A, would end up, you know, keeping the arched back strap of the 1911. They didn't put in the grip safety. So here you go, the one Star that has a grip safety. Doesn't ruin the pistol. I do love that these original ones had flathead screw adjustable rear sights. I just find that really, really neat and a really, really simple and easy thing. Like, you know, you don't have to screw around with drifting it with punches or some BS. You just throw a flathead screwdriver at it. They kept this in the 1922. I don't believe they got rid of this until the 1940, the 4th gen Model A, which would end up being like the standard pattern of Model A that would continue through until the supers in the I believe the late 40s, early 50s. But yeah, I really like that. I don't know why they got rid of it. Well, maybe I can tell why, because this one's a little wobbly. But really, really neat. Still, even with its more traditional 1911 layout. kept the dog bone style. The 1922 also changed from the dog bone style to the it's just kind of straight looking. I have a Model A carbine, but that's a bit different from a 1922 enough to not really be a good analog. But yeah, that's about it as far as showing off the pistol. I know this is getting kind of long. I did say it would be brief, but trust me, there's a lot more history that goes into things and design eccentricities that I have not covered. That maybe one day in a more long-form video, but I really just wanted to get this out with my tiny little clip of shooting footage. But just wanted to, really highlight this thing. I know there's the Forgotten Weapons video on it. It's, relatively surface level. I figured this would be at least a little bit more in depth than that, and also include shooting footage of this that, as I will clearly announce, I don't believe there's ever been shooting footage of it at least publicly shared on the internet. So here you go. So I don't think I've ever seen video of this firing. So let's see what happens.
Ever?
Right?
Will it blow up?
We hope not.
Ready?
Yeah?
Hey, I'm not dead.
That's a plus. Hey!